Hey, what is up all you lonely watchers out there? Back in January, I made a video on a handful of localized Yokai Watch names that I thought were truly awful. Some were translated poorly, some made absolutely no sense, and some were just all around bad. At the end of that video, I implored you all to share some localized names that you took issue with, and boy did you deliver. That video is going to be a hard one to top, but let's try taking a look at some more localized names personally hated by you. Fair warning that a few people left large comments with many name complaints in them, but to be fair and keep the video from being 40 minutes long, I decided to only pick one example from those comments, which was either particularly upsetting or something I have a lot to say about. For example, Matt and Jan lists a slew of examples, but one in particular stood out to me: Scalidoscope. This is a name change that has annoyed me for many years, and I'm very surprised this never entered my mind when brainstorming examples for the first video. Now, Scalidoscope isn't bad. It's a portmanteau of kaleidoscope, one of those cylindrical toys you would get as a kid to look through and see a bunch of freaky colors, and skull, because, well, he's a skull. I mean, it fits his design fine enough, but it doesn't really fit in with his spirit, which makes things taste sweeter. But to be fair, neither does his Japanese name Rainbone, which is still far superior. Not only is it an English pun already, combining the words rainbow and bone, but it sounds way better than Scalidoscope. I was first exposed to Scalidoscope via his anime episode, and I just assumed his English name was Rainbone for the longest time because it made way too much sense. So why did they change his already English name with an English-based pun into something that would frankly be harder for English speakers to understand? We'll likely never know. But on a related note, Jibachu7 mentions the legendary yokai, Bourgeoa Gi. This is the American variant of Elder Bloom in Yokai Watch 3. And his Japanese name might honestly be one of my favorite puns, and especially portmanteaus, in the series. Bourgeois Gi is a portmanteau of bourgeoisie, a term used to describe an elite and wealthy class of people, and G, a component of the words for both grandpa and old man. But in this instance, it's spelled with the English letter G, possibly an allusion to the English word grandpa. This is yet another English-based pun, well, technically French and English, but most English speakers are familiar with the term bourgeoisie, that didn't need changing. But instead of leaving things be, the localization team changed his name to Flash T. Cash, supposedly derived from the phrase Flash the Cash, which sounds like something only an antagonistic cartoon rich person would say. Some what color is your wheel level stuff. Bourgeois G, with the letter G, would have been a perfect translation. Galaxy Slayer brings up the fact that Odyssey Nyan had his name changed despite having nothing to do with the Odyssey. Him and the other two members of the Taro Nyan trio are based on figures from Japanese folklore, with Kintaro Nyan being based on Kintaro the Golden Boy, who captured Shutendoji, and Momo Nyan being based on Momotaro the Oni Slayer. Odyssey Nyan's Japanese name is Urashima Nyan, in reference to Urashima Taro. This story tells the tale of a young fisherman who saves a baby turtle, who turns out to be magical. To repay him, the turtle takes him down to a secret underwater kingdom where he gets to marry the princess, Otohime. After a few days, he becomes homesick and opens a box he swore to never open, called the Tamatebako, instantly aging him up to the present, as what he perceived as only a few days was actually 100 years, with the home he wished to return to being long gone. And all things considered, this doesn't really have that many ties to the Greek tale of the Odyssey. Sure, Odysseus spent over a decade away from his home in Ithaca due to his involvement with the Trojan War, and it did take him a long time to get back, but not nearly 100 years. And his life was still waiting for him at home. His wife Penelope lived and remained faithful to him, fending off the many suitors who sought her in his absence. Urashima's tale is much more mythical and tragic, making it a super weird thing to equate to the Odyssey. Considering the other two yokai in the Taro Nyan trio kept the same or similar names to their Japanese counterparts, it seems really weird that they just singled out Odyssey Nyan like this. I hate to sound like a broken record, but this is yet another name that should have remained unchanged, or at least only slightly altered. Let's take a break from Yokai Watch 3 and get back to some Yokai Watch 2 yokai, like the Fleshy Soul's commander, Total Dude, as brought up by Mao, specifically for seeming like a name that's trying way too hard to be cool that in reality just sounds miserably cringe. And I 100% agree, despite the fact that I kinda brushed right over this name in the last video for a joke. Total Dude's Japanese name is Ogama, which literally translates to giant toad. While the direct translation doesn't have much aura, Ogama as a name definitely does. His bony spirit's counterpart, Tsuchigumo's name, translates to ground spider, and he was localized to Arachnus, a play on the word arachnid, the animal classification spiders fall into. To mirror this, I think it would be cool for Total Dude to be named after the classification for frogs and toads. Anura. Maybe something like Sarge Anura or Honorul or something like that. Maybe you could come up with some better names in the comments. I'm not the best at wordplay. On a more cringe note, Leah Blizz brings up the wicked counterpart to Smogmella, that being Bad Smella, which could absolutely use some work, as it's probably the worst wicked yokai name by a long shot. Her Japanese name, like all the other wicked yokai in Yokai Watch 2, is just the name of her normal counterpart with Kai at the end. So in this instance, Anra Enra Kai. I can at least give the localization team props for coming up with punny names for the wicked yokai, even if this one isn't very good. If they wanted to keep the bad smell pun, maybe they could name her something like Odella, odor plus Smogmella. Perhaps Putrella or Smusty/Smogmusty for some more obvious examples. Either way, most ideas would be way better than Bad Smella because that is an absolutely devious disservice of a title. And with that quick halftime show out of the way, let's get back to Yokai Watch 3. Because this game is a goldmine of horrid localized names. Arceus fan specifically brings up Gabby, the American equivalent to Spoilerina, which... I don't actually think this name is that bad. Her Japanese name is Speech Hime, which translates to Princess Speech, which in turn could be a reference to Princess Peach. Her English name is Gabby, which makes sense. Sure, it's just a normal name, but it also plays off the idea that her in spirit makes you yap, or in other words, gab. I feel like calling her Princess Speech would imply that her in spirit makes you act more dignified than it actually does. So I would argue Gabby is a better name in this instance. But I can understand why some may view Gabby as a worse name, or why they'd prefer to keep the reference to Princess Peach. Barashi P3 brings up the yokai Ed Zoff. His Japanese name is Yagio, named after the actual yokai Yagio-san, which literally translates to Mr. Night Traveler. He's typically depicted as the rider of a headless horse with an obscured face, though he's believed to have one eye, typically accompanied by strange wind gusts. He's also believed to bring misfortune to all those who encounter him. Now, while his Yokai Watch counterpart does have one eye and a design that's more flowy like the wind, those are the only real indicators of his inspiration I can see. His English name is a corruption of the phrase heads off, since this version's head is detachable instead of him riding a headless horse. Ed Zoff isn't a terrible name, but it could definitely be improved to reflect his more mysterious nature. Maybe something like Eye Draft to reference his spooky nature along with his singular eye. I don't know, this one is kind of tricky to come up with good names for, which is why I don't really fault the localization team for Ed Zoff. And finally, Callum Jupe, am I saying that right? Says, Too Much to Take is definitely the worst localized name. And this is actually a very strange case. Their pre-evolution is named Sora Mimizuku, a combination of Sora Mimi, which means mishearing, and Mimizuku, which means horned owl. Their English name is Who Me, which is a cute pun on how they make you think your name is being called when it isn't, and the fact that they're an owl. Too Much to Take's Japanese name is Jigoku Mimizuku, this time combining Mimizuku with the Japanese phrase Jugoku Mimi, which means hell's ears, a phrase typically used to denote someone has really good hearing. Their English name, in contrast, is a lazy play on the phrase too much to take, in reference to sensory overload. It's very unclever and sounds super clunky in comparison to Who Me. I think Callum Jupe, Still don't know if I'm saying that right. Had a great idea with the name Know It Owl, though I would personally suggest the name Owl Ears, a play on the phrase all ears, that also fits better with Whomi's naming convention. And that's all we have time for today. I really enjoy making these videos, and I would love to make a part 3 in the future. Although admittedly further in the future than last time because I should focus on some other things in the meantime. So, what other localized names do y'all hate that I still managed to miss? Who knows? Maybe we can have some fun debates in the comments. Anyways, with that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye bye, my lonely watchers.